On July 24, 2025, Hulk Hogan died. The world called it a natural death, but new evidence suggests his time working with Vince McMahon might have played a deadly role. What if Vince had been slowly killing Hulk right in front of us for over 40 years? Even Hogan couldn't hide how he felt about him.
There's no attachment, there's no, I feel sorry for the guy, there's no second chances.
I've got the full story. Let's break it down. The death of an icon and the McMahon Wars. The wrestling world was shaken to its very core on July 24, 2025, when news broke that Hulk Hogan, the legendary professional wrestler whose real name was Terry Gene Bollea, had passed away at the age of 71 due to cardiac arrest. But this wasn't just the death of any ordinary celebrity. This was the end of an era that had defined professional wrestling for over 4 decades, and with it, the final chapter in one of the most complex and contentious relationships in entertainment history. The circumstances surrounding Hogan's death were as dramatic as any storyline he had ever been part of. Multiple news outlets, including TMZ, ESPN, and the New York Times, reported that authorities responded to a call at his home on Clearwater Beach early that Thursday morning, where medics were dispatched and he was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. The sudden nature of his passing due to cardiac arrest sent shockwaves through the wrestling community and beyond, but for those who knew the intricate details of his decades-long relationship with Vince McMahon, there was an almost poetic tragedy to the timing. Hogan's family issued statements following his death, expressing that they took solace in the wonderful memories he left behind for millions of fans worldwide, noting that he died surrounded by loved ones. What makes this story even more compelling and infinitely more complex is understanding that Hogan's death occurred at a time when his relationship with Vincent Kennedy McMahon, the man who had essentially created him as a global superstar, remained as complicated and unresolved as it had ever been. The story of Hogan and McMahon begins in the early 1980s, when McMahon Jr. was taking over WWE from his father, Vince McMahon Sr. It was during this transition period that one of the first major conflicts between the Hogan camp and the McMahon family occurred, setting the tone for what would become a pattern of control, rebellion, and reconciliation that would define their relationship for the next 40 years. Hogan was actually fired by McMahon Sr. for appearing in the movie Rocky III without permission, which was against company policy at the time. This early incident would set the tone for decades of tension between personal ambitions and corporate loyalty, establishing a precedent where Hogan's desires for mainstream success would constantly clash with WWE's need for absolute control over their talent. However, McMahon Jr. recognized something that his father perhaps didn't: Hogan's incredible potential to transcend wrestling and become a mainstream entertainment phenomenon. So he made the strategic decision to bring Hogan back, but this decision came with strings attached that would eventually become the very chains that would bind and ultimately break their relationship. McMahon wasn't just hiring a wrestler, he was creating a monster that he would spend the rest of his career trying to control. One of the most telling insights into their relationship came from Hogan himself during a 2015 interview in Sheffield, where he provided what he called his honest opinion of Vince McMahon.
Okay, here's the deal. There's 2 Vince McMahons. The first Vince McMahon, on a personal level, would give you the shirt off his back. If I called Vince McMahon and I said, I can't pay my house payments, I got a problem, he would be there like that. The other Vince McMahon is the businessman. And there's nothing personal at all. It's either good for him business-wise or it's not.
This dichotomy that Hogan described would prove to be prophetic, as it perfectly encapsulated the push and pull that would define their relationship for decades.
There's no attachment, there's no, I feel sorry for the guy, there's no second chances. It's cut and dry with Vince. So on a personal level, I love him to death. As a businessman, I respect him.
These words, spoken years before Hogan's death, reveal the fundamental tension that would eventually tear their relationship apart and contribute to the metaphorical killing of Hulk Hogan long before his physical death. The early conflicts between Hogan and McMahon were often about control and creative direction. In 1985, a significant conflict emerged during a segment on The Tonight Show when Hogan injured comedian Richard Belzer by putting him in a guillotine choke, leading to a lawsuit where the settlement was split between Hogan Hogan and McMahon, with McMahon covering half the costs. The late 1980s brought another layer of complexity to their relationship when Hogan informed McMahon about Jesse Ventura's plans to form a wrestlers union before WrestleMania 2, which led to Ventura's firing and prevented union formation. This pattern of McMahon using Hogan to do his dirty work would become a recurring theme in their relationship. But perhaps one of the most significant early conflicts came in 1990, post-WrestleMania 6, when Hogan wanted to turn heel, become a villain. But McMahon rejected the idea, believing it wouldn't work. This creative disagreement would prove to be particularly prescient and damaging to their relationship, as Hogan later turned heel in WCW, where it was incredibly successful, proving that McMahon's creative instincts weren't always right, and that his need for control sometimes overrode sound business decisions. The relationship reached a critical juncture during the 1993 to 1994 period when McMahon faced a major steroid trial, and Hogan testified under legal immunity, admitting to steroid use since 1976, but denying that McMahon supplied or ordered them, which helped contribute to McMahon's acquittal. However, the fact that Hogan was pressured by the government to testify added complexity to the situation, straining their relationship as Hogan's actions both helped and potentially conflicted with McMahon's interests. This period marked a turning point where business and personal loyalty became dangerously intertwined. The most devastating blow to their relationship came in 1994, when Hogan's departure to WCW was described as breaking McMahon's heart, as Hogan was the face of WWE, and his move was seen as their relationship. In 2000, Hogan sued Vince Russo, a WWE creative head, for defamation after a controversial match at Bash at the Beach 2000 in WCW, with the lawsuit dismissed in 2002. While this legal action didn't directly involve McMahon, it reflected the ongoing tensions from Hogan's WCW tenure and his complicated relationship with WWE's creative direction. When Hogan returned to WWE in 2002, the dynamic between him and McMahon had fundamentally changed. McMahon was cautious of Hogan's backstage politics, as evidenced by an incident with Kurt Angle, where McMahon feared Hogan's influence in creative meetings. This return period showed that despite their reconciliation, the underlying tensions and trust issues remained, with McMahon viewing Hogan as both an asset and a potential threat to his authority. By 2005, during Hogan's second return, he reverted to disagreeing with creative decisions, often saying, "It doesn't work for me, brother," causing further tension. In 2007, another conflict arose when a planned match between Hogan and Jerry Lawler in Memphis Wrestling was barred by WWE due to contract conflicts with NBC and VH1, leading to a lawsuit by promoter Corey McClin against WWE. This incident highlighted the ongoing contractual and promotional tensions that continued to complicate Hogan's career, even when he wasn't directly working for McMahon. The most damaging conflict in their later relationship came in 2015, when a significant controversy emerged after Hogan was asked to resign from WWE following a racial slurs scandal, with Hogan feeling upset that McMahon didn't discuss it with him first, indicating a lack of personal communication. This scandal strained their relationship to the breaking point, demonstrating how McMahon's business-first approach could override decades of personal history when his company's reputation was at stake. During the 2015 scandal, Hogan's pain and vulnerability became public in ways that revealed the human cost of his complicated relationship with McMahon and the wrestling industry.
I was at the lowest point of my life. My personal life was destroyed. I was very mad at my daughter.
The depth of his despair continued as he revealed.
I was upset over a situation that happened between her and her boyfriend, and I had no idea I was being taped. I was to the point where I wanted to kill myself. I sat in my bathroom by myself when my ex-wife was gone and the kids were gone, and I was completely broken and destroyed. And
the most heartbreaking revelation came when Hogan admitted,
I said, "What's the easiest way out of this?" I mean, I was lost.
You were suicidal.
Yes, I was.
This moment of raw honesty revealed how the constant pressure, conflicts, and betrayals had taken their toll on Hogan's mental health, showing that the metaphorical killing of Hulk Hogan had been a gradual process that had pushed him to the brink of literal self-destruction. The timing of Hogan's death also cast a shadow over McMahon's own troubles. As of 2024, McMahon was under federal investigation for sexual assault and trafficking allegations, with the probe including a search warrant for his phone and subpoenas for documents. The contrast between Hogan's death and McMahon's ongoing legal troubles created an almost surreal backdrop to the end of an era, highlighting how both men's legacies had been complicated by controversy and conflict. In many ways, McMahon had indeed killed Hulk Hogan on camera, not through a single dramatic moment, but through decades of control, manipulation, and conflicts that had gradually worn down the man behind the character until Terry Bollea's heart could no longer bear the weight of being Hulk Hogan. To understand how their relationship became so toxic, we must examine not just their personal conflicts, but the broader pattern of warfare that defined WWE under McMahon's leadership. The battlefield of egos. Hogan's most significant wrestling conflicts began with what many consider the greatest feud in wrestling history. His iconic match against Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3 in 1987, where he body-slammed the Giant and retained the WWF Championship, became a legendary moment that solidified Hulkamania. But what many fans didn't realize at the time was that this wasn't just a storyline, it was McMahon's masterpiece of manipulation, using Hogan's genuine desire to prove himself against Andre's legitimate concerns about his own declining health and Hogan's growing ego. The feud with Randy Savage that culminated at WrestleMania 5 in 1989, where Hogan defeated Savage for the WWF Championship after the Mega Powers split, marked another significant career moment. But behind the scenes, this storyline created real tension between Hogan and Savage that would last for years, as Savage felt that McMahon had used their genuine friendship as a tool for storytelling, with Hogan's willing participation in the manipulation. Perhaps the most transformative conflict in wrestling history occurred when Hogan turned heel and joined Kevin Nash and Scott Hall to form the New World Order, NWO, in WCW in 1996, which had a massive impact on the Monday Night Wars. This move represented not just a character change, but Hogan's ultimate rebellion against McMahon's creative control. By becoming Hollywood Hulk Hogan, he was essentially proving that McMahon's earlier rejection of his heel-turn idea had been wrong, and the success of the NWO became a constant reminder of McMahon's fallibility. For the WCW World Heavyweight Championship represented a symbolic passing of the torch. But for McMahon, watching from afar, this match represented something far more painful, proof that Hogan could achieve creative and commercial success without him, undermining McMahon's belief that he was essential to Hogan's success. The title versus title match with the Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 6 in 1990, where Warrior defeated Hogan for the WWF Championship, was supposed to symbolize a passing of the torch. However, Hogan's reluctance to fully embrace this transition and his subtle attempts to overshadow Warrior even in defeat demonstrated the control issues that would plague his relationship with McMahon for decades. When Hogan returned to WWE in 2002, he faced The Rock at WrestleMania X8, winning the undisputed WWF Championship and marking his sixth and final WWF title reign. This return was supposed to be a celebration, but it also highlighted how McMahon's need for control had evolved. He was now willing to bring back his former adversary, but only on terms that reinforced his own authority and power. While Hogan's in-ring conflicts were dramatic, they paled in comparison to the real-life controversies that plagued both him and McMahon throughout their careers. The most significant of these began in 2015 with the racism scandal, where leaked transcripts revealed Hogan using racist language, leading to WWE terminating his contract and removing him from the Hall of Fame. This scandal wasn't just about racist language. It represented the culmination of decades of tension between McMahon's need for corporate respectability and Hogan's inability to separate his public persona from his private thoughts. The aftermath of the racism scandal revealed the depth of Hogan's psychological struggles and how the constant pressure of maintaining his public image had affected his mental health.
Are you a racist?
No, I'm not. I'm not a racist. I never should have said what I said. It was wrong. I'm embarrassed by it. But a lot of people need to realize that you inherit things from your environment.
Most tellingly, Hogan acknowledged,
Is it fair to say that you inherited a racial bias?
I would say that is very fair, but you can break the cycle. And that's what everybody needs to know. You can break this cycle and become a better person, become who you're meant to be instead of who you're supposed to be.
This distinction between who he was meant to be versus who he was supposed to be encapsulated the fundamental conflict that had defined his entire career under McMahon's influence. Another major controversy involved the Gawker lawsuit over a sex tape, which resulted in a $115 million judgment that was later settled for $31 million. This legal battle highlighted not just privacy issues, but the extent to which Hogan's personal life had become commoditized commodified and exploited, partly as a result of the celebrity culture that McMahon had helped create around him. Hogan's 1994 steroid testimony in Vince McMahon's trial, where he admitted personal use but denied distribution, also stirred significant controversy. This testimony represented a crucial moment where Hogan's loyalty to McMahon conflicted with legal pressure, demonstrating how their relationship had become so intertwined that neither could easily escape the consequences of the other's actions. Multiple sexual assault and misconduct allegations have plagued McMahon throughout his career, including accusations from Rita Chatterton in 1986 that were revisited in 1992 and again in 2022. These allegations painted a pattern of behavior that suggested McMahon's control issues extended far beyond the wrestling ring into deeply personal and inappropriate territory. The Titangate scandal of 1992 saw McMahon accused of turning a blind eye to sexual misconduct within WWF, including allegations against employees Pat Patterson, Terry Garvin, and Mel Phillips. All three employees resigned, and Phillips vanished from public life. But McMahon's role in allegedly enabling this behavior established a pattern that would be repeated throughout his career. The most damaging recent controversy came in January 2024 when Janelle Grant, a former WWE employee, filed a lawsuit accusing McMahon of sexual misconduct, sexual trafficking, and assault. The graphic nature of these allegations led to McMahon's resignation from TKO Group Holdings, effectively ending his active involvement in the company he had built. Investigations revealed that McMahon had paid over $17 million in hush money to 4 women between 2006 and 2022 to settle misconduct claims. This pattern of paying for silence demonstrated a systematic approach to covering up allegations that suggested the behavior was ongoing and pervasive. The Securities and Exchange Commission fined McMahon over $1.7 million in January 2025 for failing to disclose settlement agreements, which circumvented internal accounting controls and led to material misstatements in financial statements. This financial penalty represented not just legal consequences, but a formal acknowledgement that McMahon's personal conduct had directly impacted his company's operations and transparency. The conflicts between McMahon and Hogan took on new dimensions when viewed against the backdrop of McMahon's broader pattern of controversial behavior. Their relationship wasn't just about creative differences or business disputes. It was part of a larger pattern where McMahon used his power and influence to control and manipulate those around him, often with devastating personal consequences. In interviews, McMahon himself acknowledged his approach to business relationships, revealing attitudes that help explain his conflicts with Hogan and others.
This is a different group of guys and gals. It's millennials. They're not as ambitious, quite frankly. And they're not trepidatious at all.
His dismissive attitude toward younger talent demonstrated the same controlling mindset that had characterized his relationship with Hogan. McMahon's philosophy about ambition and control became even clearer when he explained,
I just don't think they necessarily want to reach for that brass ring. The last person who really reached for that brass ring, in all likelihood, was John Cena. Now, there are others coming up now who definitely want to reach for it.
This brass ring mentality, where talent had to prove their worthiness to McMahon's satisfaction, was the same dynamic that had controlled and ultimately damaged his relationship with Hogan. The wrestling ring became a battlefield where these larger conflicts played out, but the real damage was done behind the scenes, in boardrooms and private conversations where careers were made and destroyed based on McMahon's whims and Hogan's ego. When the final bell tolled on July 24th, 2025, and Hulk Hogan's heart stopped beating in his Clearwater, Florida home, it marked more than just the death of a wrestling legend. To understand the magnitude of what the world lost when Terry Gene Bollea drew his last breath, we must examine not just the character of Hulk Hogan, but the complex, fascinating, and ultimately tragic life of the man behind the mustache. The end of an era and the legacy of a legend. Born on August 11, 1953, in Augusta, Georgia, Terry Gene Bollea was the son of Pietro Bollea, a construction foreman, and Ruth Vive, a dance teacher. The family moved to Port Tampa, Florida, when he was young, setting the stage for a life that would be shaped by the blue-collar values of his working-class upbringing. Standing at an impressive 6 feet 7 inches and weighing approximately 302 pounds in his prime, Hogan possessed the physical attributes that would make him perfect for professional wrestling. But it was his charisma and understanding understanding of entertainment that would make him a global phenomenon. Hogan showed early interest in baseball and music, playing fretless bass guitar for Florida-based rock bands before focusing on wrestling. This musical background would prove crucial to his later success, as his understanding of rhythm and performance would help him connect with audiences in ways that pure athleticism alone never could. He was also a devoted fan of the band Metallica, and even released his own album titled Hulk Rules, featuring his own vocals, demonstrating an artistic ambition that extended far beyond the wrestling ring. The transformation from Terry Bollea into Hulk Hogan began in 1977 when he started his wrestling career, but it was his signing with WWF in 1983 that would change everything. His persona as a heroic All-American helped usher in the 1980s wrestling boom, and his role in headlining 8 of the first 9. WrestleMania has established him as the face of sports entertainment. He won 6 WWE championships, with his first reign being the second longest in the championship's history, and also became a 7-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion and 2-time AWA World Heavyweight Champion, making him a 14-time world champion. But perhaps Hogan's greatest achievement was his ability to transcend wrestling and become a mainstream cultural icon. He appeared in films like Rocky III, 1982, as Thunder Lips, No Holds Barred, 1989, and Suburban Commando, 1991, and also starred in family films and had his own animated series. His foray into reality television with Hogan Knows Best, 2005 to 2007, offered fans an intimate look at his family life, though it would later contribute to some of his personal struggles. The complexity of Hogan's personal life became increasingly public as his career progressed. His family life was marked by marriages to Linda Claridge, Jennifer McDaniel, and Sky Daly, with 2 children, Brooke and Nick, from his first marriage. However, his family dynamics were complicated by public scrutiny and personal conflicts that would strain these relationships throughout his life. Brooke Hogan pursued a music career, releasing her debut album Undiscovered in 2006, which sold over 127,000 copies in the US, with her single About Us featuring Paul Wall peaking at number 33 on the Billboard Hot 100. She also had a brief wrestling career with TNA from 2012 to 2013 and appeared on Hogan Knows Best and its spin-off Brooke Knows Best. However, reports suggest a strained relationship with her father, with estrangement noted in 2025. Nick Hogan, born in 1990, appeared on Hogan Knows Best, but faced legal issues following a car accident in 2007 that resulted in injuries to his best friend. He has maintained a lower profile since, representing another aspect of how the public spotlight affected Hogan's family relationships. The burden of maintaining his public persona while dealing with private struggles became increasingly apparent as Hogan aged. In one of his final interviews, he reflected on the challenges facing modern wrestlers, demonstrating his deep understanding of the business he had helped create.
When you're talking WWE-wise, what you're hitting on now is an attraction. You're not talking about a superstar, because superstars, there's many, many of them.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll get hurt and they'll bring another superstar in. The attractions are what the WWE's looking for.
His analysis continued with remarkable insight.
It's going to be the survival of the quickest draw, because once you get on that level, everybody's gunning for you. I don't care what the storyline is. You got to make your own breaks when you get to that level. You got to outthink the office, you got to outthink the business, you got to outthink the company.
These words proved prophetic, as they described exactly the kind of political maneuvering that had defined his own relationship with Vince McMahon for decades. Even in his final days, Hogan remained connected to his wrestling roots.
Well, where I live in Clearwater, Florida, we have a retail store.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan's Wrestling Shop.
Yeah.
I got a bar there called Hogan's Hangout also, and we have like storage places, you know, around Clearwater Beach with all my stuff in. Pinball machines, wrestling buddies, yellow boots with Andre the Giant's blood on them.
The mention of Andre's blood on his boots was particularly poignant, representing both the physical toll of his career and his deep connection to wrestling history. The impact of Hogan's death reverberated throughout the wrestling world and beyond, generating an immediate outpouring of grief and reflection on social media platforms. Reaction videos began appearing on X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram, with several users sharing live reactions and panel discussions. The immediate response demonstrated just how much Hogan had meant to multiple generations of wrestling fans and how his influence had extended far beyond the wrestling ring. Among the most poignant reactions came from wrestling veteran Mick Foley, whose emotional tribute captured the shock that many felt at Hogan's passing.
Well, it was almost shock because he was one of those guys who was larger than life. You just assumed, and he didn't appear to age. So you never thought that the last time you saw Hulk Hogan would be the final time you saw Hulk Hogan?
Tributes from the wrestling and entertainment world were swift and heartfelt, with The Rock mourning Hogan as a childhood hero, reflecting his influence beyond the ring. The immediate response from current and former wrestlers, celebrities, and fans demonstrated the vast network of lives that Hogan had touched throughout his career. Brooke Shields posted on Instagram with a photo of her, Hogan, and Kathy Griffin, captioned, "Rest easy, Hulk," while Honky Tonk Man posted a tribute stating, "I will miss you, Hulkamania," alongside a picture. These tributes from entertainment figures outside of wrestling demonstrated how Hogan's influence had transcended his primary profession. The wrestling community's response was particularly emotional, with many performers acknowledging how Hogan had paved the way for their own careers. His role in transforming professional wrestling into a global phenomenon was repeatedly emphasized in obituaries and tributes, with many noting that without Hogan's mainstream appeal, wrestling might never have achieved its current level of cultural acceptance. His rise with Hulkamania and cultural impact, from movies like Rocky III to reality TV with Hogan Knows Best, was extensively covered in retrospectives. These analyses highlighted how Hogan had been one of the first wrestlers to successfully transition between different forms of entertainment, establishing a template that many others would later follow. Despite the controversies that had marked his later years, his professional contributions to wrestling's global popularity remained undisputed. The consensus among industry observers was that whatever personal failings Hogan may have had, his impact on professional wrestling and popular culture was undeniable and irreplaceable. Hogan's net worth was estimated at $25 million in 2021, reflecting his business acumen and diverse revenue streams. This financial success demonstrated that despite the various conflicts and controversies throughout his career, he had managed to build and maintain significant wealth through careful business decisions and strategic career moves. His involvement in the 50 Legs Foundation and various charitable activities, such as supporting the American Diabetes Association, showed a commitment to giving back that extended beyond his entertainment career. These philanthropic efforts provided evidence of the genuine caring nature that many of his colleagues had mentioned in their tributes. Even in 2025, he had remained active in the wrestling business, co-founding Real American Freestyle Wrestling in April 2025 and serving as commissioner. This continued involvement demonstrated that despite his age and health concerns, Hogan had remained passionate about wrestling until the end of his life. What are your thoughts on Hulk Hogan's sudden death? Share your memories in the comments and click on the card for more stories like this.